My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.
All right, guys, welcome to the Property Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Kaminsky, stepping in for Dave Dubois. He's working on the next big thing. So if you've ever been thinking, oh, I need to, invest in some single family home, or I need to do some sort of land development, chances are it might be closer to home. And by closer to home, it might be the condo that you actually are already maybe owning or a part owner in, because there is money there. And today on the show, I've got Josh Martin. He's going to tell us a little bit about how he was able to, make some money in real estate through his condo. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on the show. With you and Dave, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's a pretty decent. It's a little short. I usually do hour longs on my other things, but sometimes all you need is a good 20, 30 minutes to get to the point. So, the big question everyone always wants to know is you're at a networking event and you're shaking hands. They're like, how'd you get started in real estate? So tell the people at home, what was your first, entry into it, and what got you addicted to doing real estate?
Yeah, sure. So when I was 21, I was renting a place, and the landlord approached us at some point. I was working out of town up north in the oil fields,
Mm-hmm.
and her son and her owned the condo that we were living in.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, we just want to get out of it. We're not sure that we want to keep it anymore. And I built a bit of a relationship with Darla, and I said, what would you guys want for it? And so she gave me a price, and I said, well, if we do it between us, and we don't need the realtors involved, right?
Right.
So she gave me a price. I did some research. I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. And I'm working in the patch, so I could come up with a little bit more money pretty quick. So I was like, okay, give me like a month. I'll get the deposit that I need for funding. So we went down that path, and I ended up purchasing that property. We were in that property for 4 years, and then the market where I am in BC kind of shot right up. And I was like, we should take advantage of this. So I sold out. My condo was the highest selling one in the building at the time. And I made $100K profit. It was my first dabble in real estate, right? I was like, this is really cool. And I'd heard horror stories and people make the money and then they lose
Mm-hmm.
it and whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I got to get back into something. And so I went into the next deal, which was with my parents, and that was a land deal. We bought 2 properties side by side.
Mm-hmm.
In all honesty, it was more than we could chew.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, how I got started into it. And then now I'm into real estate development. I work for a big development company here, and I handle the construction side of things. But that was my first kind of deal in real estate, and it kind of got me hooked into how it worked. I've learned a lot since, and that's kind of how I started.
Yeah. And so, what about your, education background in real estate? Did you read some books? Did you get a coach, or, where's your education come from to kind of be effective in the real estate market?
So up until that point, I hadn't read or really done anything. It always piqued my interest, real estate, on where it was going to go, what I was going to do with it. There's so many different avenues that you can go into it. So I hadn't done any research up until then. And then I went into those 2 land deals, went through that, fumbled our way through it. And then 2019 came, and I found Grant Cardone.
Mm-hmm.
And started studying all his stuff, getting involved in the sales, the real estate, learning how he's putting deals together, and then come up to forward to where we are now. I now have my development group of mentors that are showing me how they're funding deals privately, how they're working out the equity, the CMHC, and heavily involving me in that. So that's kind of my education side now. I still have Grant's platform and watch it, but
Yeah.
That's kind of my day-to-day stuff as I'm getting it from the company I'm with now.
And how did you mentioned you were working in oil sands, I guess it was up in, Fort Mac or that area. People make good money, and sometimes they take that direct flight to Las Vegas. I know I've been to Fort Mac, and I'm looking at the thing. It's like flight to Calgary, flight to Las Vegas. I'm like, that's, if there's 2 options, where are you going? So how did you manage to stay, disciplined enough to have that money to get into that condo?
The truth of it is, up until the point that they said, "Do you want to buy this?" I didn't.
Mhm.
I fell into that category. Like I made good money and I would come home and it's like, yeah, let's go for dinner every night. And I had the nice
Yeah.
truck and all the toys. Every time a new phone came out, I bought one. Like, and that was kind of our lifestyle, right? I did put money away smart enough to put money into like RSPs and stuff, but it wasn't
Mhm.
as much as I probably could have. So up until that point where it was like, hey, shit or get off the pot. This is the deal. It's in front of you. And I had to really kind of accumulate that money. I hadn't really done much saving, to be honest.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's just about having something that's worth investing in that can have you shift your spending habits. Usually real estate is one of those things that has people shifting their habits. So let's go down to the condo. You were living in there, or were you renting it out? Because I guess you're going back and forth. It's empty. Were you just leaving it empty, or did you have roommates? Like, how did you support that or manage that thing while you were out of town?
So when I was out of town, my girlfriend at the time was living in the building for the first few months. When I first bought it, we weren't living together. 3 or 6 months, something like that. I can't
Hmm.
remember.
Hmm.
So it would just be empty when I was gone. Being a condo, it's a little bit safer than your house, right? So I just
Yeah.
left, and I would
Yeah.
come home for my week or 10 days off. But we had rented it previous to that, and we just ended up fortunate enough to be in the right place where they were like, "Hey, we want out of this. Can we buy it?" And it actually lowered our rent. Our
Yeah.
rent was a little bit cheaper by turning it into a mortgage, which was nice. So yeah, that's kind of how we managed that for the most part.
Okay, so then you got that 100K out, and like you were saying, some people go to Vegas with it, right? Some people like make a windfall in real estate and then it never gets reinvested, but you made a point to do something with it. That was that land deal. And then, where have you been? Because now what I'm curious is, how did you get into actually working in these developments? Was that land deal led you to working with these companies that are doing these buildings?
Yeah, so my background is very heavy in the civil infrastructure side of things and earth moving.
Hmm.
And that's kind of, my superpower, I guess you would call it, in
Hmm.
my
Yeah.
in my skills that I bring to the table now, right? So I was working for a civil company in the time. I was helping them run the civil operation, and we got into the deal. I'll go a little bit more detail into it. So we bought these two properties side by side
Hmm.
with the intention to build. Because I was in that network, I was like, okay, we have a builder that will help us with the license, so that we don't have to, pay somebody a 10 or 20% on top of our fee.
Hmm.
So we worked out a deal there, went to the financing, and then of course financing kind of stumbled us on a few things when we were doing the stress test. They're like, "Well, you would make it, but you have this other property." So we
Hmm.
went down like every avenue. We're like, "Okay, do we sell one of these vacant ones to my brother for $1 so it's not on our thing? Like, how do we, And nothing seemed to work. So unfortunately, we ended up not building.
Hmm.
We sold the plans to the new owners, and we ended up being fortunate enough to walk away clean.
Hmm.
So we didn't lose any money, aside from maybe a little bit of interest, but
Yeah, and the
minimal
fees and
minimal
stuff. Yeah.
amount. Yeah. And then we just kind of closed out of it. I learned a lot from that, particularly, working with family. Love my parents, but they're not in that aspect of the civil and the earthworks and how all that works. So they didn't understand it, right?
Hmm.
And that is part of my fault, is I should have explained a little bit better. So that deal fell through. And then over the journey, I've just kind of continued through my civil works and keeping my head down, worked for some bigger companies, and always seemed to work my way into some sort of management position. And then I took a step back and went to work for a financial services company for 6 months. And
Hmm.
then the pandemic hit, and unfortunately, my wife got let go of work. So I went back to work. And that civil experience is what got me into development, because the developers that I work for, one of their biggest Achilles' heels was not knowing what's in the ground and how to handle it. And unfortunately, when you do these new developments, your architect, your civil engineer, your structural guys, they don't understand how all that stuff works necessarily. They just know, okay, it has to fit in this box of requirements.
Yeah.
But when you get in the real world, it doesn't fit like that. So I've been able to add some value in that sense. And that's a big part of my role now, is making sure, when we design these buildings, they flip it over to me and it's like, okay, does this even work practically?
Hmm.
Like, can we build this? Is there something we need to change? Is there cost savings? So that's what I do now for the most part on a daily basis, as well as help managing the crew up in the Kelowna Valley now.
Oh, interesting. Because yeah, some of those developments, they're digging way down. Like you're digging these pits, that these guys
Yeah.
are working in, moving dirt and stuff like that. So you're mostly handling like the digging of the foundations and how that works. Because you're right, they're like on paper, this sounds good, and we'll just go down 15 meters, and you're like,
Hmm.
I don't know about
Yeah.
that, guys. Like there's
Yeah.
rocks here and whatever here. So you think that oil
It,
sands work helped kind of understand that?
I think so because it got me used to it. I mean, in Alberta, like I'm in BC now, but in
Yeah.
Alberta we have clay, right? So in certain patches, when you hit clay in BC, people were like, I don't know what to do with this. Versus all the guys that have been in Alberta is like, well, we got to get this, this, and this, and it'll be fine. So I think it definitely played a small part in it for sure.
Mm-hmm. So is your plans now to get back into real estate? Are you looking for that next deal? Is that what you're got your eyes open for the next thing?
Yeah, so with the company I'm with now, I have the opportunity as an employee to invest into any of our real estate deals should I see
Okay.
fit. So I get the benefit of that. I am still obviously having conversations with other developers. For me, it's not so much that I'm looking to put the money in. I'm trying to use my skill set in the civil and earthwork side of things. And it's like, okay, if you've got a project, I'll put in some time on this and help you manage
Hmm.
it better, but I want a piece of the cake at the end kind of thing. So that's kind of what I'm looking for now. I've got a few kind of tenders out. And then through the network, I've been able to network with some guys that are doing some stuff in Florida, a bunch of guys in Texas. And so I add
Okay.
value on those calls in that sense as well to kind of help them go through, ways that I would think we should structure the build. What areas can you face the building? What ways can you put the road? Like all that stuff. So
Hmm.
that's kind of my avenue of it. I mean, my personal goal over my life is to have 100 doors of my own or with partners. So that's the goal long term. But yeah, right now I'm looking for those land deals that I can add some value to, in exchange for some sort of equity or a consulting fee on this side if that's what it comes to.
So the interest in American real estate, a lot of people say BC is a little too hot to handle if you don't have the big money. Is that why you're starting to look down south? I mean, it's definitely, there's places you can buy a house for like 15 grand and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
what got you interested in taking a look down south? Are people coming to you, or are you going down there? Like how's that played out?
I think big part of it was being in the Grant Cardone circle because he's in the States.
Mhm.
And then I just started getting networking with more people and it kind of became a thing. They have some unique opportunities in the States that we don't unfortunately have in Canada.
Mhm.
One of the simplest ones is like if you own a home in the States, your interest can be written off every year. We don't have that benefit here. Also, like you mentioned, the barrier to entry is a lot less in the States than
Mhm.
it is in Canada, right? I reference like it to Alberta because Alberta is the more affordable province, right? And then you got
Mhm.
Saskatchewan, obviously too, but um,
Well,
it's
don't forget about Manitoba over here.
oh
We just
yeah,
got
and
a little
Manitoba,
piece,
yeah,
the flyover provinces, let's call them.
yeah,
If
yeah,
Ontario and Alberta just collapsed, maybe no one would even remember.
yeah.
So
I
yeah, it's
don't,
definitely
I don't know
affordability,
about
right?
that. It is affordability, yeah, and they have more incentives, and depending where you go, like Texas, for instance, like I was down there probably a month ago now, and
Mhm.
it's just a different ball game. Like the whole permitting process is, simplified to the point where it's like, does it meet the zoning? Does it meet the height? Here's your permit. And it's just like build,
Yeah,
right? There's none of the like political crap that comes along with a lot of stuff in BC.
yeah.
I know particularly in BC, there's a few municipalities that people won't work for. Like developers will be like, you know what, it's not even worth it, even if the land's cheap, because it's just to put through the councils and those things, it's just such a problem, right?
Yeah, and considering the housing shortage, you'd think they'd be trying to push these things along, but there seems to be, at least from my experience, and maybe you can touch on this, there's like a disjoint between policy and plans and execution, because like we need more houses, but there seems to be not much, pressure from the top to make that
Yeah.
happen. Where are you seeing that in BC with your development experience?
Oh, it's a huge gap. Like it's, down to policies like in BC, we have the BC building code, and
Mhm.
energy code that you have to get to. So the energy code is like if you get to step code 5, which they're trying to get to by 2030,
Mm-hmm.
Your house basically has to be a passive house, so it can't lose any energy. And the
Wow.
problem with that is you're creating, now you've got, every engineer under the sun involved. Now you got a energy modeling engineer. Like, you start adding all that on to a very simple house. Well, of course the price is going to go up, right? But they're like, oh, well, we're being energy efficient. But yeah, a province like Alberta has built like that forever. It's 10 times colder and they're not
Mm-hmm.
changing anything. Doesn't necessarily mean that what they're doing is, the best way to do it, but it works, right? In BC, we have such a gap between, developers and policy that's going on, and even between developers and construction, that we're trying, like our team building our development and our construction side, we're trying to shorten up that gap by hiring people like myself and a couple of people that work for me, because they have skills in set areas that are more on the construction base, right? So for us, we're trying to see and mitigate that. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of developers are going that way. Is they're, can we bring our own construction team in-house to kind of help mitigate the consultants, and how do we handle all this? But yeah, that gap is massive, and unfortunately, I don't see it shortening up anytime soon. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. And um, one thing that I always like to ask the developers when they're on the show is the interest rates typically are stalling development. Are you guys seeing the lending canceling projects, or is it business as usual? What's the forecast from some guy, someone like yourself on the ground?
So from us, because I get to, like, I'm more heavy on the construction side. I get to dabble in that, and I've been to a few of our banking meetings and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're pushing through, but the dynamic isn't so much, it's the interest rate is there, but it's more on, okay, if we were going to build single family on this or duplexes, now it's like, how do we put townhomes in instead?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we got to get the amount of units up now to account for the interest rate being so high. So those are the kinds of things that we're dealing with, is we're going through some redevelopment. How do we change this so it fits the land better? How does it impact the amount of units? What is the rent rolls? How does all that work to try to, counteract the interest rate?
So you're just pushing through, but you're having to densify your plans. Is that what I'm hearing? So more
Yeah,
units, that's good, but more units at the cost of what, smaller units?
smaller units. Yeah.
All right. So we're looking towards the future. What are we talking? Smaller units like 300 square feet, 400 square feet?
Um, we haven't built anything that size yet. I think the ones that I'll be building in the next few months, in West Kelowna, are about 900. So we're still doing a decent size.
How do they measure up to what you were building before? If it's at 900 today, what
Mhm.
was it prior?
So if we go back to the condo that I bought,
Mm-hmm.
that condo was 1,280 square feet, right? And it was more of a, like, open kind of
Mm-hmm.
plan, versus
Yeah.
now we're doing 900 square feet, but because of all the energy stuff and modeling that we have to have, you've got extra ducts, so you get a wall somewhere randomly, or like, we
Mm-hmm.
do our best to obviously make it more open, but they are definitely changing in size. Usually, unfortunately, some of the second bedroom usually gets shrunk down to try
Mm-hmm.
and make up space, which then probably becomes an office or kids room or something.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen it drastically in ours, but I know there are other developers around that are going quite a little bit smaller to, the 700 to 800 kind of range in like the studio style.
Okay. So now we're here. We're, just for the timestamp here, it's October the 20th, 2023. Looking towards 2026 over the next 3 years. What are your plans as far as real estate, and where do you see things going as someone who's in the development industry?
Yeah, so I obviously anticipate staying with the company that I'm with and kind of building on the side. I think it's Ryan Pena. He talks about that, is, should get to a certain income threshold before you go into, buying tons of real estate. So
Yeah.
I'm working on that, and I want to start building some multifamily. We're actually currently looking at some stuff in Calgary, seeing if there's areas that are, rezoned and ready to go with an old house on them. We can knock them down.
Yeah.
So those are kind of where we're focusing our energy on right now. I think for us starting, in BC is a little bit rich, particularly in Kelowna.
Yeah.
Armstrong, Lumby, some of those areas are really great, but we're kind of looking a little bit further away from ourselves right now. And so that would basically be the plan, is to kind of get a few of those under our belt into a holding company and bring in some partners on it, as well as invest back into the company on the development side that I'm with bonuses or my own money or creative ways to do it. So that's kind of my projection for the next 3 years.
And for those of you listening along at home and not on the video, this guy looks relatively young. He's a good looking guy here. How old are you now, and how much longer do you have to get to 100 doors?
So I'm 29. I turned 30 in December. So I would like to
Happy
see that 100.
happy early birthday. 30 is a big
Thank
year.
you,
Good
sir.
for you, man.
Yeah. I personally would like to see that 100 door by like 50, 55. I know it's
Okay.
some people can do it really, really fast. Between me and my wife, we've got some other goals with her business too. And I know if we just start accumulating them, they'll just get bigger and bigger. And eventually, we'll be able to buy a unit that's 25 units or something like that. Right. So, we're being patient with it, but at the same time, I do know that, it's only 20 years away. So, that's kind of our goal.
20 years, 100 doors. What's that? Five a year? Am I doing the math right?
Yeah, I think you
Five
are. I'm
times,
not the
yeah.
greatest at math, but yeah, that's
Oh,
5, I think. Yeah.
let's get out our calculator.
Yeah.
You're not going to
Yeah.
have a calculator everywhere you go, son. You better learn. Actually, I
Yeah.
do, sir. So, um, yeah, I mean, 100 doors. Certainly, you could get into syndication. You could probably get into parts of these things with these developments. I wouldn't be surprised with, you're relatively young. I didn't even start real estate until I turned 30 actually, and I was like, I'm not making enough money. I got to go and do something where the decimal places are a little bit bigger. So I moved into real
Yeah.
estate and started in on that. I'm 39 now, and it's possible to get to 100. If I had kept everything I ever touched, I'd be at over probably 150 properties. But the main thing here is you got lots of time, lots of runway, and I think you're positioned for your age to really absorb, and the opportunities to invest are going to be huge. So 100 doors, I bet you could do it by 35.
For
That'd
sure.
probably
It's
be something
definitely
you could do.
possible. Yeah,
Well, with
it's
not a whole
definitely
lot of work,
possible.
I think the big thing is like whatever, however long, I can't remember who it was saying, but it was like however long you set for it to happen, it will be done, right? So
Yeah.
whatever, if that's your goal, but it's good that you're balancing both of them, because you can't just, I was interviewing another guy earlier today, and he's like, you could hustle until you could do 12 deals a year, but 10 is probably a pace, because sometimes people talk about slow and fast, but the reality is pace,
Mhm.
repeatable, maintainable pace. So whatever that is for you, I'm sure you'll figure that out, and I'm sure you'll get there. So if people want to get in contact with you, Josh Martin, invest with you, learn more about you, get them consulting on their projects, how do they find you?
The easiest way is my Instagram. So it just is I am Josh Martin. And I'll answer any questions, emails, whatever messages that I can. I'm more than willing to chat with people. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, this guy's a wealth of knowledge. So you should hit him up on Instagram. I am Josh Martin. And yeah, time flies when you're having fun. And I will see you guys on the next episode.
Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewyou.com. Now at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.